Kit, thank
Okay.
you so much for being here. Do you know, the last recording that I did, it was also in the evening, well, our evening. And I had my little glass of bubbles with me. Got my little glass of bubbles today. I almost feel like,
On Monday.
why not?
All right.
I'm recording the podcast.
I feel lame. I should go and get a sherry.
You really should.
I might get the wife to bring me a sherry.
The wife.
Yeah, my husband.
I love that. I'm like, how can we calling him the wife? You're so rude. Yeah. Text him and say, bring you a sherry. Obvious. This is this is chill time. This is like girl chat. I said, when I had one of my other guests on called Charlotte, I said to her, this feels for me like that secret conversation that Black women have together when anyone who's not Black has got the glass like pressed up against the window, against the door, like, what are they talking about? I want to hear, like that kind of conversation. I'm like, yes, but those kinds of conversations we need wine or some sort of alcohol. Don't worry though, when I'm recording during the day, there will not be the presence. But it's 8 p.m., 7 p.m. your
Yeah,
time. Like,
it's fun.
let's
It's
get
fun.
into it. Right. Monday is just another day. Like, let's get into it. No, but you know something, it's awesome to have you here. First of all, as one of our inaugural guests for the Black Women Parlay podcast, one of the fundamental, like, initial members of Black Women Parlay network. And I'm really proud and really happy that you kind of just always supported. And in many cases, this is what this podcast is all about, talking. Black Women Parlay for me is meant to be that space of that. I know you've got sisters, but outside of your sisters, having that sisterhood that you never knew you needed,
Yeah,
creating that space to have these kinds of conversations, not just talking about what everybody else is talking about, oh, the microaggressions and whatever. I'm not saying they don't all exist and they don't have a
Mm.
place, but really acknowledging the fact that we are in a special place. And what do we do with that responsibility? But
Mm.
how do we connect with the challenges that we face right now? And how can we carve a path for those who come behind us to ensure that they don't face the same challenges, which I
Yeah.
think is a different dynamic than kind of having what I'm going to call the complaints table,
Mm.
which there are always things to complain about. But I think there's a certain level of, we're solution driven women who are
Yeah.
trying to kind of push forward, change the narrative. I'm going to call it lean into luxury, lean into the things that make us happy. Really take our mindfulness and our intentionality seriously, just not just in the way we work, but also in the way we live. And I think that's what I love. And let's also keep it real. There aren't that many black female CEOs across Europe as it is.
Yeah.
And for me, that was one of those things around. Previously, I was the managing director of, and I changed it into CEO because at the beginning I didn't want to seem too much of, or I didn't want people to look at me or think or whatever. But actually what it came down to was part of embracing who I am and where I sit
Yes.
is accepting the title. Now you can have whatever title you want, but in my mind, I am a CEO. I embody that, so I should live it. And that's why I love the fact that you've just been the CEO anyway. You're like, yes, that's me. And I was like, yeah.
I started off in the first sort of little bit, I started off as founder because I thought that founder was, yeah, less showy than CEO.
Mm-hmm,
And I thought to myself, but what am I going to be? Like, what is this supposed to be?
mm-hmm.
You know, I'm growing an organization. That's my plan. So my title needs to reflect that. And I know you see these posts, and I know people who've posted this, so like there's no shade, but you can't be a CEO of one or you can't be a CEO of 10. It's like, well, there is that, but there's also something about setting your stall out and saying, oh, this is what I am going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the reason that I didn't want to do it in the first place was what you've just said, just like I don't want people to think
Mm-hmm.
X, Y, or Z, whatever that might be. And it's like, why am I concerned about that? Actually,
Mm.
I'm creating a business to change the game.
Right.
So I need to have a title which reflects that.
Correct. And it's that part around, and I know we're going to be talking about this today, but this towing this line between self-preservation and authenticity. If I call myself a CEO, am I going to be putting a target on my back for people to criticize me, to think that I'm too big for my boots, I'm this, I'm that?
Yeah.
But am I being authentically myself by not giving myself the title that I live every day?
Absolutely. There's something about, and I don't know why we do it, but we try to reduce ourselves. Like we seek to minimize ourselves. So it's like, well, and I think you're right to say, like, I don't want that target on my back. I don't want people to be looking for reasons why maybe I'm not a CEO. So if I don't say I'm a CEO, then we can't have that conversation. And it's like, well, that's, again, if we think about, that authenticity piece. So what am I saying to my clients, my customers, my contacts, about who they should be and how they should show up? And then how do I then go and I try to make myself invisible. I mean, you and I have talked about this a lot, right? That I just don't like putting myself out there. And you're like, listen, get yourself out there. / I'm going to get you out there,
Therefore, today.
Hence today. But like, you spend so much time doing that, and these things seem like very small decisions, don't they? Oh, I'm just going to change my title on LinkedIn to X. But actually, the thinking that's gone behind it in terms of why it was the other way is actually quite a lot.
Correct.
It's a big shift. And then also when people start referring to you as, or responding to you as, you're like, oh yeah, that is who I am. That is what I do every day.
Yeah. Or for me, it was, when you're sending your bio to, and you're a panelist or you're doing a keynote or whatever, and someone said, "Oh yeah, I put your title in as CEO and founder," and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, I went to your website, but why aren't you using CEO?" And then all of a sudden, I was like, "For what?" Good point, well made. Why am I not?
Why am I not?
Yeah, right.
That's my job.
And it was, and it's sometimes this level of affirmation and validation that we seek it from someone else to kind of give us permission to say, oh yeah, that's okay.
Yes. Do you know, someone gave me permission to call myself a CEO by basically saying, why are you not doing that? And I was like, okay, if you're saying that, then that's okay. That's actually how it happened. And it seems pathetic now to think about.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't seem pathetic at all. It seems completely rational and logical, because it was the same for me. My CSO, John, he was like, why am I a CSO and you're a managing director? That doesn't make any sense. He's like, you're the CEO and you're the chair because you have this group. I was like, oh yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's how we grapple with, and I think especially when you're moving out of the domain, obviously you've been longer in the game than I have, but especially when you're moving out of this domain of corporate and corporate structures and corporate titles. And don't get me wrong, we are still corporate, no question about that, but we get to define the title and how we show up.
Yes.
And it's like, how can I always make sure that I'm myself, but we still, like, I am not scared of confrontation in any which way, shape, or form. But when it comes to business, if I can reduce, to your point, minimize, be very reductive, to minimize the, just in general business, the laws are minimize the points of friction to allow yourself to progress, right? And if the title is one that's going to minimize friction, you almost feel like, no. But then at the same time, what I've understood, and what I've not even just what I've understood, what I've seen is, when you comport yourself a certain way and you're having certain types of discussions, your title in that sense becomes immaterial, because no one then questions it, because they see that you know your stuff. They see that you're talking to them as somebody with experience. They see that you're talking to them with someone as a place of knowing. But that initial hurdle is, no matter where we go, putting titles aside, is protection first, fun afterwards.
It's true. But also I think, frankly, and I think it's definitely a thing in the world of corporate, but I suppose the world generally, is we've been conditioned to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been conditioned to describe ourselves in smaller terms than we actually show up. And as you say, that's a protection thing, that's a self-preservation thing, because we know the response that we get when actually if we define ourselves accurately, the response that you get isn't always so welcoming to that. So you go, okay, I might be CEO, but I'm going to call myself managing director, because there's less friction, there's less potential for conflict there. You know, people are very happy for me to under describe myself. You know, so then we go with that until we have someone tell us that that's nonsense.
Right. We don't get to fully live our accomplishments in a meaningful way. We always have to try and live our accomplishments in the hope of making other people feel comfortable. Like, I still remember, so funny, a guy connected with me on LinkedIn. And he connected with me on LinkedIn, had a really interesting business, wanted me to be an ambassador. So I started kind of prodding and pressing, like, why, who, what do you do? How does this benefit? Yes, it's a women's focused product, and you're a man launching it, and all your team is male, and everybody's white, and you want me to be a Black ambassador. So what are you doing for Black women? So as we're going through this conversation, we're going. All of a sudden, he starts to question my credentials. So then I said to him, yes, so I said to him, I said, look, really nice talking to you, but you do realize that this is not a job interview. You do realize that you contacted me because you were looking for a Black woman to be an ambassador for your business. That is not. I have to do my due diligence, because you don't get the value of my face and my sign in for me to then bring Black women to you when I don't know what you're doing for Black women.
Yeah. It's isn't it funny though? It's like the audacity of it, that they think that you would just co-sign.
But I think this is what people get used to. And I think it's, when I think even about, there's this one infographic that I did, which was all around like not being seen as the difficult Black woman at work, right? If you make a complaint, if you raise an issue. And I think it's sometimes the same, is that the expectation of us, and sometimes because we want to avoid confrontation, and you think, oh, okay, I'll let it go, just for an easy life. But what I think is definitely happening now is that the more of us who are speaking just about life experiences, and it doesn't always have to be, and this is what I say to people, not everybody has to be an activist, excuse me.
Yeah.
This isn't about activism. It's about recognizing that there are more Black women who are willing to speak up, even if it's not publicly, but they're still willing now. We're still willing to have those conversations where we go, actually, you know what? This is all good, but this wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I think we were stuck in this thing about, I don't know about you, but I could have never imagined at the time I was there complaining about any of the things I was going through at work, because you just didn't want to be that one. And that was even to Black friends.
Yeah.
You just put up, shut up, and carried on.
Yeah. Or just, and in some senses, like, not just put up and shut up, sometimes like really, sometimes I certainly noticed that I like sometimes facilitated it, right? Because you kind of go, that's easier. That's an easier existence for me to have, to sort of smooth this out somehow and kind of make it easier for you all than to be the person who says anything really counter to it, which is, given where I am now and kind of what I'm working to create with my team and my company, I just think, you just think, I wish I could talk to Kit from 10 years ago, and just be like, listen, there are ways that you can actually challenge what's going on around you that don't kind of fall into that confrontation space where you feel like you're putting a target on your back or exposing yourself in some way. There are ways to do this without kind of participating. I feel like I participated a lot to get by.
But I think this is the importance of this conversation, because there cannot be any judgment for participating because we did not know any better. And at the time, anybody who looked like us, who was in the public eye, they would not have been talking about any of their issues because the correlation for most Black people, and, you know, I have strong feelings about this in terms of in America, because Black culture is embedded in American culture, even though they don't want to call it Black, this part about coming from the hood and the ghetto is very much embedded in the American dream as well, right? So just because somebody's hood doesn't mean, if you think of all the Black celebrities, they still go back to the hood, they still make references. Yes, their tastes, you know, elevate with money, but they still hang on to where they come from. Whereas within the UK, because we're so classicist as well, you find that a lot of well-to-do Black people are like, oh yeah, racism doesn't happen to me because I'm too rich for that. I've out-earned that whole situation.
I've out-earned.
Listen, I call it incidental Blackness. There are a lot of people who are coincidentally Black. That is it. Because when you talk about anything else, they've never spoken about anything it was never a problem for them until it was, you know, a money-making opportunity. Then they're like, oh yeah, I'm Black. But there are a lot of people even today who in an act of a lot of women today who in an act of self-preservation, be it for being able to have financial security, being able to have any sort of security, are forced to play the game to stay invisible and get on. And there's no shade, there's no judgment there, because sometimes that's what it comes down to. It comes down to, I need to survive another day, and maybe when I get to a certain point, and this is not a financial thing, this could be like a psychological thing, this could be, you know, so many different things. This is not to do with money. But when I get to a certain point, then I will have the strength emotionally, psychologically to fight this battle. But you have to be prepared, because with that battle, or with that one moment when you decide to take a stand, it triggers so many other events that are then out of your control. That once you do that, it's not just the one thing you do that's going to be, it's like it's a whole game changer, a whole life changer.
Yeah, I think it's that that point that you were just talking about there is like I remember when it was. I remember thinking to myself, oh, I just need to get there, and then it will be all good. And I remember kind of being very, like, probably at my most, you know, senior within a corporate environment, and realizing, like, that moment where I realized that actually it's not going to change. I'm just more senior. So I need to look and to do something else. I need to look to create something else if I'm going to actually be able to do what I want to do and be my authentic self and all of that kind of stuff that the corporate world tells you it wants you to be. Actually, at the time, and it feels like decades ago, but it wasn't. It was like, what, 5-6 years ago. The world of corporate actually wasn't ready for that at all. Didn't want it. It's not that it wasn't ready for it. Actively didn't want it.
Didn't want it, and there were no regulatory or legislative reasons for it to change.
or frankly, or commercial drivers for it to change, right?
Correct.
There were zero reasons for anybody to pay attention to it. You know, unfortunately, a lot of what we're seeing now is the, you know, the fear of legislation coming. So people are like, let's prep, or the fact that industry and you know, the commercial driver is now saying, we need to see more Black women, we need to see more Black people. You know, you're seeing organizations and brands all over the shop saying, oh, you know, we support Black women, we're going to do this for Black women, because there is money to be made.
Correct. And they've exhausted all the other avenues, who are now highly indebted, and they need a new income stream.
Yeah.
But the other reality about it is that a lot of these brands cannot step to us yet, because and I dare say a lot of us, and I'm looking at you and I'm looking at myself, and I would say most of the women who are in our Black Women Parlay network and beyond, we're not your average consumer. We've spent too long not being catered to as consumers. So when you want to turn your face now and say, we want your money, my first question is, why am I going to give you my money when there are other companies that have checked for me for all those years?
Yes. And I think they don't realize that. Like it's as if they don't understand how discerning a group of people we actually are. You can't just now say to me that you're all about Black women, because you haven't been. Like, I've been here watching you not be about me.
Listen,
Like,
I was talking to somebody she was a senior marketer at a French luxury goods house, and she was based in New York. And she was talking to me about, like, there was a scandal that a Black person went into Chanel. Oops, I said the name. Whoops. Anyway, don't matter. It can get edited out. And basically, they're not looking at us as their consumers. And they're not prepared to change their marketing to even envisage us as their consumers. Because even sometimes when I think about it, and it don't even matter, how many times I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to think of a Black celebrity who carries a Chanel bag like that. Because I can think of like Black celebrities who all have Hermes Birkins. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's any less racist. I don't know, by the way, but I'm just saying, like, I can't think of Black celebrities who are into Chanel like that. But we're not their consumer, and the irony about it is, especially for like luxury houses, do you know the things that make them rich? The small goods, the things like key rings, wallets, card, all of this stuff that's accessible, or their accessible lines like Emporio Armani or Armani Exchange, all that stuff, where who are predominantly their consumers? Black people. But they're not marketing to us. And I think now there's a particular type of Black woman where we're not shopping to shop just for the sake of it. You're shopping with intentionality. You're shopping with the view of, if I buy this silk blouse, I expect it to last for 10 years. I'm not buying it because I need to buy another one in the next 3 months. We're looking for quality. We're looking for values. It's not just buying. And I think they have to start to, and I think that's part of our authenticity coming through, which is we're no longer going to try to buy into brands that don't buy into us.
I think so. And I think there's kind of a collective understanding that is the power that we currently have. That's kind of what I'm hearing from so many of the conversations like that we have, or that the women in our network have. It's like we get that now, and also we are galvanizing.
Great word.
Around that kind of understanding. And I think this is what's forcing the kind of almost incessant forcing of we love Black women from these brands. It's like they're recognizing that this movement and this shift is happening, and they're trying to react to that. It's like, but again, we can see through it. It's a bit like when you were talking about you doing your due diligence, with your man from the ambassador guy.
Right.
It's just like we're all doing due diligence for each other now, because it doesn't take very long for someone to be like, that brand does X, Y, or Z.
Correct. and it's one of those things. It was like, when I put on my other hat, the CEO hat, it's one of those things that, like, this is the conversation I keep telling so many organizations. Your reputation isn't the one that you have your marketers for. For Black women, your reputation is it cool to work there? What is the interview process like? Have you had any issues there? And if another Black woman tells you no, and we have the data and the stats to prove it, 25% of the women who completed our survey said their decision to take a job or work for certain organizations is based upon the stories of other women, Black women.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing. I was talking to a client about your survey. But I said to them, it's the same, it's like, so for me, if I go traveling, if I'm going anywhere, I will get online straight away and I'll be like, I'm going to Argentina. What is Argentina like for Black women?
Listen, that is why what's it called? The Green Book, right?
The Green Book.
Right.
Yes. Yeah,
That is why
actually another that I always talk about Green Book as well.
Right, right.
That's what we do. Is this place safe for you?
For me. Right.
Yeah. Then I need to hear that not from company
travel,
X
not from
TripAdvisor,
TripAdvisor,
I need to hear
or
that.
Black Tomato or Blue Tomato or Mr. and Mrs. Smith. That is all great.
It is. I need to hear this from the mouths of other Black people who have been there and who have experienced it.
Right.
That is what I will trust always.
Right.
And it's the same. It's the same when companies are looking to bring people. This is why, again, you and I talk about this all the time, but you can recruit. You can set yourself a recruitment target to
all
get
day, every day.
Black women in. And the fact that you want to get more Black women into your organization is the laudable thing because Black women are brilliant. So it makes sense. But if you haven't sorted out what's going on underneath there, all you're going to have is more Black women telling other Black women to stay away from you. That's it. And then they'll leave. And again, it's sort of like you have to understand how we are incredibly discerning and we have power now. We know that we are in demand. It's flavor of the month time, right? It's everybody wants a Black woman to work for them. I've had people call me up for jobs that I am unqualified for. Right? It's like, I am not a Drupal developer. Stop calling me, please. I run my own company. I have a job.
Yeah, if I knew what that was, but yes.
But the fact is, so we're getting called left, right, and center. So we've got actually lots of places that we know that want us now. So this is good. So we have a sense of empowerment. We have the ability to say, okay, actually, I'm being offered more opportunities now than I used to. And it's partly because of what's going on in the world. But actually, I'm not going anywhere until I know that that place is safer, better, offers me more than the place that I'm currently in. It's not, I don't have to, I'm not moving out of desperation.
No. And I was going to say to you one interesting thing, and this was a super interesting trend that I've come across, and I've been told about this by quite a few different Black women, is what a lot of organizations are doing at the moment is they're asking inclusive recruiters to find Black female candidates. But the thing is, the candidates that they find aren't relevant for the job, but they will still bring them to interview because when you start to look at their diversity numbers, they can then say that, okay, last year we only had 2% of interviewees were Black women. This year we've increased that to 20%, which then perpetuates the myth about, Black women aren't capable for the job, etc. Oh yes, bring it on, the sherry. Perpetuates the myth that Black women aren't capable to do the job. So it's that part around self-preservation once again in doing the due diligence. If you know that you are wholly unqualified or this is not your job, don't go for the job and believe it's a stretch assignment because they're doing it to skew their diversity figures, not because they have any intention of really hiring you.
Yeah. And that's the sad thing, isn't it? Because the time and effort that goes into papering over the cracks like that, it's like, why don't you just fix your company and make it better for Black women to work there? Why don't you put your time into that rather than putting your time into skewing the numbers? Because a lot of organizations, you're right, are doing that, because again, though, they've targeted people on the wrong thing. And so they're driving the completely wrong behavior. How many people have we got coming through the funnel, or whatever it might be? And it's like, well, then all you get is someone saying, can we just see Black people, please? They're not getting the jobs though, but we are talking to them, and
And that's an improvement step.
Yeah.
And this is how self-preservation becomes even more important, because it's that part about saying, what am I giving my energy to?
Yeah.
What, who, and why?
Yeah.
Because once you realize that you're expending energy in places and spaces that don't deserve you, you realize how much energy you're wasting, but also how much damage you're doing to yourself.
Yeah.
Because self-preservation for me isn't just from a defensive, protectionist kind of perspective. It's also going on the offensive and saying, well, what can I do less of to protect myself?
Yeah. Oh, completely. Because otherwise you can't drive. Like, if we're, you and I are, kind of very similar in this sort of purposeful, mission-led kind of approach to life. So if I'm divvying up my energy and I'm putting it in the wrong places, that actually means that my mission's going to suffer. But all that happens is I'm wasting this, it goes nowhere. But again, to kind of have that conversation with yourself and be like, okay, there are some things here that I really need to consider. One is, what do I deserve, which is such an important word that you used. What do I deserve to do? What do I want to do? Therefore, what have I got to stop doing in order to facilitate that? And why am I doing those things that waste for? What is that about? I remember having a conversation with Shireen, like in the before times, that saying, oh yeah, I'm really focusing on, talking to people who are like, I really wanted to like the hardest people to try and change their minds. And she was like, but why? I was like, I just, if I could crack that company, or I could crack that person, that's, she's like, but why are you wasting your time on them? I was like, I actually don't know what that was for. Like, I don't know who that was for. What was I trying to do? What was I trying to prove? And now it's like, and that sort of started a kind of little sort of dominoes set of, who do I want to work with? Who do I not want to work with? What am I going to put my time into? What am I not going to put my time into? Where's the benefit for me and my personal mission, but also for what we're trying to achieve as a company? Like, why I'm not aligning myself to people who are not interested in doing what we're trying to do. I don't need to do that anymore. There are enough people who are. So let's focus on them with this in mind. Like, these are your values and this is what drives you. So you need to not spend your energy on anything that doesn't sit in that box.
Yep.
Seems obvious now.
It doesn't, because I think this like, you've started me on another one. I think
sorry.
No, it's not a bad thing. I think there's something within the Black psyche that we believe struggle is the only way to succeed.
Yeah.
And I'm not even just talking about like, I'm not even just talking about work. I'm talking about like, this concept of being like a ride or die chick. I know we don't say it like that in the UK, but this whole concept of, sticking with a man through to the bitter end. Yeah, there's ups and downs, but why is it always at the sacrifice of my personal peace and well-being? And all of this kind of stuff where we've just been programmed to always see it through.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we forget is that, like, back in the day when they were talking about seeing everything through, but it was because it was for the glory in another life, not for this one. Do you see what I mean? It's like, yeah, it doesn't have to always be a struggle. And I think the other thing is that we take for granted, not everything is easy, right? But we take for granted that sometimes things can just be straightforward.
Yeah.
By omitting, and I think about this, in the context of friendships as well, right? We don't like to accept that friendships are for a season. Now, the duration of the season can be 6 weeks, it can be 10 years, it can be to the bitter end when you both end up in either as ash or whatever. But we still hold on to things that aren't good for us. For nostalgia, for it's been so long, we go way back, all of these things that aren't healthy behaviors, because we sometimes think it's more important to hold on to a piece of history than it is to move forward in many cases. And it's that
Yeah.
it's sometimes, I think the difficulty is knowing how to prioritize what is damaging me versus what is, what's damaging me, what's hindering me versus what's helping me, and what's demanding in a good way that I grow.
Yeah, I think that's it, isn't it? And I think, but again, it comes down to how comfortable we are doing things that benefit us, because we've been programmed, conditioned, socialized to not do that. It's like you were saying, like the struggle, the toil, that's where actually we get our kind of our glory comes from, right? It's like
Right.
she's so hard, she's pushed through that. Actually, creating a life for yourself which is easy and that you enjoy is not something that we have been taught to celebrate.
But think about it, right? If I think about like my grandparents' generation, they came over to the UK in the 50s, right? They worked hard. They went out with their, it's not like they never partied, right? So they worked hard, they partied. But this concept of hobbies, that you just sit around and do things for fun. No, they didn't have hobbies. They had hobbies later on in life when they'd retired, because they retired early and then started traveling like around Europe. My parents developed hobbies in later life. Our generation, we've had hobbies since we were kids. So they didn't always do it, but this part about, we've had hobbies, but it's the hobbies had always been tied to, I don't know, doing Duke of Edinburgh Award because it looks good on your UCAS for when you go to university, right? Learning how to swim because everyone learns how to swim, and there's loads of black kids that can't swim. Go playing hockey, tennis, whatever, because that was all part of school. Okay, all this kind of stuff.
That's different, isn't it? Because it's extracurricular. That's not, we don't, again, it wasn't like for personal growth, I want to be it
was defined to a goal to help you achieve, to get you to the next stage. 1 A plus B equals C, like that. And this concept of hobbies, I think I developed my hobbies. I developed a hobby like cooking because I didn't have to cook from a young age. But this part of us always needing to do stuff and be focused and driven. And because of the way society treats Black women, I think that this part about creating space for ourselves to just enjoy is so important. Because we will do everything but take care of ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
If someone says to you, goes, no, go on.
As I was saying, it's almost like you can expect that if I was doing one thing and I knew that it would benefit someone else, I'd happily do it. If I knew that same thing was just to benefit me, I'd think twice.
Always. Think about when you're potentially meant to be relaxing on the sofa and you got your phone in your hand. And then all of a sudden you get this massive wicked idea. You're inspired now. You're like, yeah, this is such a cool idea. And your fingers are going. You're like, yeah, man, but you know what? I've got this idea. But that's meant to be you relaxing. But you're not. Someone says, can you do this? Yeah, man, I'm coming. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Yeah. Taking the 10 minutes. Oh, yeah, how was your day? Oh, yeah, I never even had time to go to the toilet too. Why not? I just had stuff to do. I stayed up all night because I had stuff to do. And it's getting out of that mentality of, or do you know, like when we say, when you talk to each other and you go, yeah, but you know how it is. We're Black women. We always get stuff done.
The thing is, right? The challenge with that is it's true.
True. Listen,
it's true.
It is 100.
We need to create space, like you say. So we need to create space to enjoy. We need to create space to just explore for no reason whatsoever. We need to create space to understand our own experience. All of these things, which actually for us are luxuries. We don't get to sit around and just, navel gaze because we're too busy getting stuff done. Because that's just how we've always operated. But actually, and again, like when I now look at my team, and I think about, you know, the things I'm encouraging them to do, and it's like I want them to take the time to reflect on
Mm-hmm.
who they are, how they are, what they do, you know, their previous experience, previous work experience, their previous work trauma, all of those things that you don't get a chance to think about because we're too busy getting stuff done. But actually, these are things that help you grow.
Right.
You know, if you're not taking the space, not taking the time, your growth is going to be actually quite limited and very kind of narrow in focus. If the only thing we can grow into is a role or grow into, you know, a
A
specific,
glorified workhorse in
yeah.
every single part of our lives. And, you know, I think about this part, you don't know what you will never find out who your authentic self is until you go on a path of discovery.
Absolutely.
You don't know what you like if you never try. You don't know if you like to travel, you don't know if you like to read, you don't know if you like books, you don't know if none of this stuff. If you're always running on the treadmill, you never get to actually walk in the park and smell the fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah.
That for me is the part where authenticity and self-preservation in that sense go hand in hand, because you first of all have to discover who you are to preserve it. Because the worst thing, and when I say dying of a broken heart, not because a man's broken or, you know, your partner's broken your heart, but because you've got to the end of your life and you've gone, I don't even know who I was. All I did was I ran through my life, and now I'm sitting here. I can't even tell you if I'm happy with what I've achieved.
Yeah.
I can't tell you if I'm happy with what I have achieved. I've got the accolades, I've got the money, but I don't know if that was what I
I've
wanted.
done the things, all of
Right,
these things that I have done.
right,
What
right.
does it actually mean for me? Is it what I wanted? You know, when you look back and you're like, okay, so I know that I'm here. Did I want to be here? Like, I'm happy with where I am, I guess, but did I want to be here? Is this the
I
journey?
guess.
Yeah.
Right,
You
right.
know, and it's like,
Hmm.
this is where for us now, like for us as women, for us as Black women, this moment that we're in, where the world seems to have realized that we exist, actually, this is the time for us to take the space. Because all of those people out there who are saying, we want you to, even though they don't, we at least we kind of we've been given that permission that we need, you
So
know,
we
because
need,
we do
right.
need it, unfortunately, but they're giving it to you. They don't mean it, but they're
Take,
giving it to you,
but
so take
take it,
it.
take, take,
Exactly.
take
Take
it
it.
on, take it on the face value of which it is being given. Take,
Absolutely.
take it.
Take it and take the space and learn about yourself and think about what you want and think about what you deserve
Mm,
and start demanding it. You use words that are just so important about what do you deserve, and be, I tell people this, so I speak to so many Black women, I'm like, be demanding of your environment, of the people you
mm,
work with, of the friendships, of the friends that you have now.
mm-hmm.
Be demanding, and I don't mean be a douche, but I mean demand what you deserve,
Right,
you know.
right. It's the fine line between being picky and selective, right?
Absolutely.
Picky means that you ain't got that you ain't got nothing to give.
Uh,
Selective means you know your value
you
and
know your value.
you're basing it accordingly, right?
Absolutely. I don't need to have people in my life now who are just going to take from me. I've done that for a very long
Ah, why are you starting on this topic now?
time.
Because we don't even have time for this one. Because this one right here, our need to feel like we belong
Mm,
is often traded at the price of being exploited
yeah,
by other people.
absolutely.
And we do it for so long.
For such a long
And
time.
everybody hangs the carrot
Mm,
in front of our faces, and everybody else's carrot is gold and ours is made of shit.
yeah.
And when you bite into it and you're like, I got the carrot and this is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
like that is a whole different podcast that I would just dedicate to get to Black girls between the ages of 18 and 28.
Yes.
Because you are in your, I like, I don't know, since I've been 30, just confidence. Like I've always been self-confident, so it's never been that. But this next level self-confidence, deep-rooted reassurance, I don't know, it feels different to when I was in my 20s, right? I was self-confident, I was gabby, and people back then used to call me arrogant or whatever. And I shrugged it off because I didn't really care, because I didn't think I was arrogant. I was like, arrogance is based on no substance. But
However, I know that I'm amazing, so
correct, so you know. But now in my 30s, it's like back to this word about intentionality. I wish so much, you're so giving in your 20s because you genuinely believe that everybody has your back. And all of a sudden, as you push into your 30s and you start to make strides career-wise, even personal life, whether it's meeting your person, whether it's marrying your person, whether it's having kids or whatever it is, there's a real divergence in friendship, and you are never prepared for it. Never.
Yeah.
And that right there, that moment is such a seismic shift, and it's so destabilizing. And nothing it's worse than any heartbreak you've ever experienced.
Completely.
Because it's friendships that broken down, friendships that you thought were forever friendships.
And when you realize what then, because the thing is, when they break down around you, that's when you do start to kind of evaluate and explore and think, okay, what the hell just happened here? And when you realize what they were based on is what you thought that they were based on, i.e., oh, I thought we were like equal partners in this, and actually what you realize is, no, you were taking from me the whole time. And now that I am changing, and now that I am shifting, and I require that balance, now our friendship doesn't work. That's interesting. Okay.
It's rough because you go through the archives, and what
Mm.
you realize is that your inexperience at listening to your instinct, or sometimes even listening to your mother, telling you that they're not a fan of that friend.
Mm.
And you're like, no, it's all good. She's cool, he's cool, blah, blah. You start to put all the pieces together, and you realize how uneven the friendship was, but that you chose self-preservation, i.e., you didn't want to rupture a friendship on what you then believed were groundless reasons.
Yeah.
And you sacrificed your authenticity for that.
But this is the thing, but unfortunately, that moment, especially for Black women, that moment is really important.
It is.
It's so formative, because you have to kind of go, it doesn't mean that it's fine from 28 plus, because frankly, we're still, 28 to 35, we're still like tweaking the whole time.
It's not even settled to like I'm 38.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
Listen, I'm 38, and now like the dust is just settling, right?
Right. So, but you do start to, you need those anchor moments to be like, okay, that was like my first wake up call. Okay, cool. And then my next one is when I realized that a lot of the advice that I've been given isn't really advice for me. It isn't about helping me grow. It's about keeping me in a place. Okay, I've got to now understand that. I remember being taken out for lunch by somebody who was very senior to me, but was supposed to be the kind of person who would create opportunities for me. I was quite senior in the organization that I was in, and at this lunch they said to me, oh, what do you want? What do you want? Where do you want to be in 5 years? And I said, well, I want the CEO's job. It made sense. If I charted out my path, it makes total sense. And he said to me, oh, do you know what you should really think about hiding your ambition. And I was like, oh, okay, like in my mind thinking, oh right, okay, yeah, so goodness me, I probably shouldn't have said that. I've got to be careful who I speak to. And then I had a conversation with one of my best pals, white male, And he had a very similar conversation with his boss, and he said, look, I want to be CEO. And this guy was like, cool, right, who can I introduce you to? Let's go, let's go, let's go. And I remember thinking to myself, how have I been listening to all of these people who have been ostensibly giving me advice, but actually it took me ages to realize that that's not what was going on there. So that was another formative moment for me when I was like, right, okay, I've got to be much more discerning, much more aware, much more, you know. And unfortunately, whether it's friendships or whether it's work or whatever the context is, we have these little moments that are actually quite big that tell us, right, this is what life is, and this is how you need to navigate, and this is what you need to not forget about this experience here. You know, whether it's the first time you realize that your friendships are unbalanced, or the friendships are based on you being subservient in some way, or
Correct.
the first time that you realize that actually not everyone who's giving you advice wants you to succeed as a Black woman. Oh, okay, that's really important for me to learn. Or the next time that you realize, hey, I've been reducing myself for someone else's you know, these are all these little milestones along the way, right? For us to figure out, okay, so how do we then navigate now with that knowledge? Now I've got that knowledge. How do I keep building on that knowledge? And that's the growth bit. And that's where we need to take the time to evaluate ourselves. So when we're thinking about what does it mean to be authentic, I need to evaluate myself based on the experiences that I know I've had. Those things that we've just talked about. It's like, yeah, but they all form part of the reason that I am who I am now. How
Correct.
I'm not, I wasn't a confident person, you know, before I started my company. I wouldn't have considered myself to be a confident person. But that kind of spectrum of authenticity. So I've always been authentic, but not necessarily confident in myself. And now I'm sort of I'm sort of at the other end of it, where I'm like, I'm not just authentic, I'm now very confident in who I am and what I'm about and what I'm trying to do. And also who I want in my space to either help with that or support with that, or do you know what I mean? Or drive it with me. But the kind of reflection and introspection that you need to do in order to get to that place of confidence is massive.
Yep.
And going back to what we were saying before, if you don't give yourself the time and space to do that, how are you going to know?
Because all life will then be is living to work, or not work, sorry, working to live and living for holidays, which is no life at all, considering out of 52 weeks, you probably get 4 weeks holiday.
But also, going back to what you were saying about hobbies, it's like, I want to enjoy what I do, you know. And how can you enjoy what, I mean, I'm very lucky. I love my job, I love what I do, I love the people I work with. I just feel like I'm the luckiest person on the planet. But I've crafted that for myself. I've crafted the life that I want, or I'm crafting, you know, the life that I want. I'm crafting with some incredible people that work with me, the company that I want to help change the world. And I really enjoy that. So actually, we are able to find the thing that we enjoy, so that work doesn't have to be, going back to what you were saying before, all toil and struggle. I can enjoy it, and that's allowed. You know, I can work really, really hard and have a smile on my face, and nobody can say anything about that. You know, for me before, if I wasn't, struggling, working hard, constantly busy, etc., all those things that the corporate world, kind of tells you,
things that are still used as
work.
signals of success. Oh, like, yes, we are all busy. Yeah, we are. But guess what? Same time, we find time. I find time to go sit somewhere and read some foolishness, or I find time to be on TikTok for an hour, or I find. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's
got to.
It's all constant choices. Recently I woke up one of the days and I had a headache, and I just felt groggy, I felt rubbish. And I know this is a privilege. So I'm not saying that, like, I'm not saying this because, this is what everybody else should do. But I understood the honor and the privilege of being able to wake up and go, oh my gosh, I cannot cope with today. I'm going to go hide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the reality is that when I think back now, when I was in corporate, to be fair, one of my bosses, he was super cool like that. I'd wake up in the morning, but listen, I ain't coming into work today. I will work from home. And he'd be like, fine. Like I can't cope with today. I'm just tired. He'd be like, cool, cool, cool. But this is the point, and like we're gonna have to wrap up in a bit because time is flying. I mean, you could just talk forever. But I think in many cases, I'm not saying that it's all about having things the way we want, because we know that's not the world we live in, right?
It's just not.
But same time, what I think is very, very important is understanding, just like, when you think about schools and education, understanding how we learn, understanding how we grow, understanding what our key drivers are, understanding what makes me fundamentally me, and going on that journey of what makes you you. Because it doesn't matter. You and I could sit down together and find 100 things that we like that are the same, but we could find 100,000 things that we like that are completely different. And it's channeling that uniqueness that each one of us has to say, this is what I am, this is who I am. But being in many cases brave enough to own it, own our quirks, own our oddities, own our weirdness. Because for every single quirk and oddity we have, everyone else has they've got theirs, but they're hiding it. So, Kit,
Yes.
after all this real talk today, because we've gone there, and it's been a good conversation, because there's so much food for thought. Where can people find you if you want to be found?
People can find me on LinkedIn mostly, although not enough. I know. Look at your face. You're like, can they find you?
I did not say a word. I was just listening and waiting.
Soon, people will be able to find me on LinkedIn after this. Now that I've said it. But yeah, LinkedIn. Pretty much. That's probably where I hang out mostly. I'm not a big social media person, as you know. But I like, I'm on the circuit, do some talks. They can find me on Black Women Parlay.
They can. And then your business as well. Don't forget to mention that.
Yeah, Mindweaver. So we are we're a tech company, really. We're focused on bringing diversity and anti-racism to emerging technology. We work with companies to figure out how they fundamentally transform how they engage with predominantly Black people, and we look at anti-racism through the lens of people, process, and technology. We do really exciting things. I've got a very, very exciting team. Have a look at the website, www.mindweaver.co.uk. And yeah, we're just trying to change the world. That's what we're trying to do.
Love it. So I'm going to thank our guests, even though they're not here right now, but they will be, for tuning in and listening to You Know Where to Find Kit. You can find me also on, hold on, I'm rubbish at this, Leanne Mair on LinkedIn, at Leanne MM on Instagram. We have Black Women Parlay, which is an invitation only network. So if you do want to join, you can either stalk Kit and see if she will recommend you, or you can find me either on LinkedIn or Instagram and say, why you'd like to join. The whole kind of deal behind Black Women Parlay, as I said, is the sisterhood that you never knew you needed. It's global. We are growing. And I have loads of exciting plans for the things we're going to do. Eventually, we'll be doing retreats. Next time, hopefully, in one of the next podcasts, I'll be wearing our merch.
Nice.
Our sweatshirt. But yeah, so come and check us out. We have really, really cool time. One of our guests, Mimi Grace from the podcast, she came and talked to us about the need for Black women in romance stories. If you ever checked out my older podcast, Black Female and Dating, I have strong opinions on that. So thank you very much. And you can find us on Spotify and or Apple Podcasts. So that is all for today. Bye-bye.